tecnología artística. El día de hoy tenemos a la violonchelista Marie Itier. Ella es graduada del Conservatorio Nacional de Lyon y el Conservatorio de París. Es invitada regularmente a tocar en lugares de prestigio como la Filarmónica de París y aparece como solista en todo el mundo. Ella trabaja a menudo con conjuntos ingleses, italianos o alemanes y ha sido solista bajo la dirección de directores de renombre como Pierre Boulez. Es profesora de violonchelo en el Conservatorio del Distrito 15 de París, profesora visitante en el Conservatorio Nacional de Lima y da clases magistrales en Europa y América Latina. Gracias a sus variadas experiencias musicales, Marie Itier es una artista cuyo eclecticismo y apertura son evidentes, en su particular interés por la música nueva. Ella también aborda fácilmente los repertorios de todas las épocas, la música de cámara, así como solista. Fue ganadora del primer premio en el concurso de violonchelo del Club Sonta en 2008 y ha recibido subvenciones de la DAMI en 2011, Mecenat Musical Societe Generale en 2012, la Fundación Meyer en 2013 y el Francisco Salabert, así como la Fundación en Francia en 2015. Muchas gracias, Marie, por venir. Bienvenida a la Enes Morelia y a la Licenciatura en Música y Tecnologías Artísticas. Gracias.
Buenos días a todos. Hello to everybody. I think I will do this conference in English, if you don't mind. Is that okay for everyone? Yeah? Okay, so many thanks to Mario Duarte, Rodrigo Sigal, Emma Weil, El Semas de Morelia, and also the French Embassy of Mexico to invite me to spend this week. I'm really happy to share this moment with you. I imagine that most of you are composers, students of composition here. And do you hear me well? Yeah? Everything's okay? Better like that? So we will share this hour together. What I want to do is to divide this conference in two sections. Well, first, I think I will present my work, my projects, what I do, what I've done. And then the second section will be about the technical possibilities on the cello in the music of 21st century, especially in pieces that were written for me or that I play a lot. And then after that, we can share together if you have any questions or any things to say. I consider this conference more than a speech, more an exchange with you. To have a cultural exchange, I think it's important for me as for you to be in contact and to have lots of different points of view. So, as Mario said, I'm a cellist. I'm a French cellist, Marie Itier, and so that's me. Well, I will begin with what I did before. So first, perhaps that will appear a bit strange for you, but I would like to say that I began the cello age of 5 years old, but with a Russian professor. So for 10 years, I spent this time to study the cello with him, with the Russian school. That means a care of sonority of the instrument, the cessation in the sonority, and also care on the vibrato. It's important. You will see why after. So those 10 first years were really traditional learning of the cello. Then after that, I entered another bigger conservatory, a French one in France, and and I prepared a diploma, the first that we have in France, called our musical study diploma. And for this diploma, I had 2 cello solo recitals to do. So from 16 years old, I had my first experiences with contemporary music, doing 2 cello solo recitals with contemporary works. And, well, I liked it a lot. It was a discovering for me, but also I considered I was young. I considered I could be free, and I was very curious about how the music was written, because it was new. The different possibilities on the cello were also very new for me. So that was a very good experience for me, those first experiences of contemporary works, age of 16 years old. Then after that, I entered the National Conservatory of Lyon. In France, we have just 2 national conservatory, superior, Paris and Lyon, 2 cities. So it's very selective to enter those conservatory. But after that, you have lots of possibilities to work with great teachers, great composers, great partners of chamber music, orchestras, and solo projects. So that was really good for me. And in Lyon, it was for the bachelor and master. So I continued to study the classical repertoire, of course, to go to some international competitions, and to work and to discover some works of 20th century. So I discovered this sonata of George Crumb, everything of Bartók, of course, but a strong experience for me was to play and to practice and to spend times on Nomos Alpha by Yanis Xenakis. That was completely new for me, and as you can imagine, I don't know if you have seen already the scores of Xenakis as students, but you need to have time to understand everything. Otherwise, you can just play, but not the good way. If you want to be precise and to really enter the universe of the composer, you have to spend time. So that was a very strong experience for me. And I met also his wife, because he was already dead, of course. So that was a good exchange for me. And in master, I assume it's the same here in Mexico, but we have a thesis to do. Thesis, yes. So, well, I wanted to make a thesis on special cases of composers of the 20th century, which were singular in their way to compose, in the story of the Europa. So I took 3 cases: Yanis Xenakis, György Ligeti, because I played also works by Ligeti, and I was really interested in his works for orchestra, especially, and the case of Giacinto Scelsi, which is really singular in the musical landscape in Europa. So it was good work for me, and it was also connected with an instrumental approach. Well, as I told you, I played this Nomos Alpha by Xenakis few times. I played also works by Giacinto Scelsi, but not for cello solo first. The first one I played was for cello and contrabass. And György Ligeti, the cello concerto and the cello sonata. But the cello sonata is a bit more traditional. So Ligeti, it was much more on his orchestral works, which are more singular. So after that, I realized that I finished my master, I played contemporary pieces, repertoire, but what I missed was the experience with a live composer, and I really wanted to work with a live composer. And there was a postgraduate in the Superior National Conservatory of Paris called Artist Diploma, and this postgraduate was specialized in contemporary music. So I did those 2 years of postgraduate, and I spent lots of times with a live composer, and especially with young composer. So that was a good experience for me, and I really wanted to complete this learning with all the aspects. So lots of them wrote pieces for me. I had, of course, for chamber music, I had chamber music pieces, but also cello solo pieces written for me, and also with electronics. Lots of them, they wrote for me with the electronics. And I spent lots of time at the IRCAM. It's like the same mass, but in Paris. It's a center for electronic music. So I discovered also all this electronics program with Max MSP, with all the specialization of the sound. That was really interesting as a performer, to practice with the pedals, and to share also the work with a sound engineer to decide how we work together, which if I take some pedals, if he takes some others for instrumental reasons or gesture. And also, I also learned to consider the sound engineer as a partner of chamber music, because he plays during the concert with the levels. So it's important to consider it not just solo pieces, but for me, really like chamber music pieces. So that was interesting also for me, this. And I had like 8 pieces with electronics written for me. Aged, I was 25, I think, at this moment when I finished my postgraduate. So it was a lot, of course. And after that, when I finished my postgraduate, I found an artistic manager to organize my schedule, and well, find me some concerts and everything. I had concerts, of course. I began to do recitals with classical pieces, but in the same recitals, much more modern pieces, which was a bit new, because in France, traditionally, you had like concerts for to play the classical music repertoire, and other concerts for the contemporary music. But this association was not so known and not so usual. So I began to do this. I didn't know why, but I wanted to do this because of my of what I was, and because I learned the cello first with the very classical and traditional repertoire, because I like the sonority of the cello, and also because I'm very curious and I like the modern pieces, and I really wanted to make the audience discover all the pieces that I liked, the more recent as the more older, as the older. So I also teach. I was teaching at the 15 districts Paris Conservatoire. Well, and in fact, I teach since I'm 13 years old. So, but this was my first true job of teaching. So that was important for me. And as an artist, to have all those points. So teaching, playing, work with composer, work the repertoire, work the modern music, and to think to the transmission also. To try to be complete as an artist. We always try this, I think. And I wondered, I had something in my mind, because all those pieces written for me with electronics by young composers, I really wanted to make them discover and to make them live. So the many possibilities I had was playing them in concert, but also to record them, because otherwise, most of the time, those pieces with electronic, they are premiered, or perhaps they will be played another time, but then after they will stay in the libraries of IRCAM, of conservatory, because the concert hall, some of them are not adapted to that kind of work. They don't have the quadrophony or octophony, or even just a régie backstage. How do you say régie? They don't have the dispositive electronics to do the concert. So I decided to record all those pieces. And, well, I did this first album called Le Geste Augmenté. It's El Gesto Aumentado in Spanish, I think. Augmented gesture. I think I have like 6 or 7 pieces in this album. One of them is from a Mexican composer, Antonio Juan Marcos. Well, what was really interesting for me in this project is that all those pieces in concerts were thought for stereo quadrophonia, but some of them were also in 5.1. Do you know this? 5.1. Or in octophonia, or even one piece of spatialization. So, okay, everything's okay. There's no crash, there's no electronics. And the IRCAM and the Paris Conservatory, they had a prototype of software called Transpan. And this Transpan could propose the spatialization of the sound in the recording, in the album, in binaural, is to reproduce the spatialization from headphones or casque, or transaural is when you reproduce the spatialization of the sound with 2 loudspeakers equidistant. Do you know already this technique of binaural, transaural? Yes, I think now it's a bit more known. So we got all the spatialization of those pieces in the album. It's okay? Okay, I don't move anymore. So this first album was in 2015, and well, I got a label, so it's this company wanted to. Better? Yeah, but. One, two. It's good? Yeah? And so I got some sponsors also for this project, like the French Foundation, which is a big sponsor. It was really useful. We have a ghost. And it's okay now? Okay, I go on, it's okay. And another sponsor of the Salabert Foundation, which is a good foundation for in the support of creation and work with composers. So that went very well, this first album. Even if it was first project very free, very unexpected for the musical world, because there were just young composers, newborn. I mean, that was my first one. But it's outside now. Okay. So then I did some concerts of this program to present those works. So I did it a couple of times in France, in Spain, in Germany, and also in Mexico. I went to present this work. It was in 2016, I think, just after the release of the CD in 2015. And well, I made also lots of conferences in conservatories to present the work and to show to performers how to play with pedal, with electronics, how to consider the sonority, etc. But after that, I got the impression that I missed something. It was like, it was good for me to do this project because I wanted to do this. It was a necessity because it answered to a problematic of how to transmit those pieces, how to make them alive. But I missed the true sonority of my instrument, the deep relation with the instrument, the timbre that I liked. That was my first experience with the cello when I was young. That's why I explained to you before my studies. So I wanted to find composers who won't avoid the natural sound of the cello, but in the same way, who will have a singular language and something very modern. It's not too easy to find because some of them, especially in Europe, and especially in France, they are used to learn harmonics effects, noise effects, multiphonics, but they don't know really the instrument. And so we decided with Alireza Farhang, it's an Iranian composer, to try something together. He wrote already for me a piece, Zamiad, for cello and electronics in the first recording. And what I liked also, it was to continue a work. So not just one piece with a composer, but a way together to think together about the possibilities of the relation performer-composer, but also for him, how to adapt. And for me, well, how to be helpful in the process of composition, to include my ideas, my desire, but also to discover a language and to go deeper and deeper with someone in a way, in an idea that continues. This idea, I like it a lot because now I take really in consideration this work with lots of pieces with composer, because I think it's it becomes deeper and deeper. So this is Ali Reza Farhang, as you can say. This is this composer. And France Musique, which is the radio in France, commissioned a piece a cappella, which was written for me in 2017 for cello solo. So in this piece, I think we found something like not. It's a piece which does not avoid the natural sound of the instruments, but with lots of microtones, with very singular gestures, and at the end, I think that was what I was looking for at this moment. So in the same direction, I had a cello solo recital in a Festival Messiaen, which is a big festival for contemporary music in France, and they wanted me to find and to choose a young composer to make a commission. So I have listened to lots of young composer works on SoundCloud and etc. And I found this Bastien David, which was really interesting for me because of his strong personality and strong rhythm care, strong care of rhythm. And so I have chosen this composer for this recital. It was in the same way. So how to take in consideration the instrument, how to bring modernity and something very new. And he had something very singular. So I was sure it could work in what I wanted at this moment, in my desire of this moment. After that, I had those two pieces, and it's always the same question: how to transmit it, how to make them alive. So through the concert, through recordings. So in France Musique, when a piece is commissioned, the premiere, in this case, was recorded in the radio, on the radio. So we had this recording of a cappella by Ali Reza Farhang, and the piece Riff by Bastien David. We recorded it, but we did also a movie. It's a DVD that will be released, I think, beginning of next year. And also, we decided to publish those two pieces. So what I mean is not to publish them, just the pitches, the writing of and the rhythm, etc. Is also to get the informations of gestures, of bowings and fingerings for all the cellists, because my desire was also to make possible to offer those pieces to cellists that are not used to play contemporary music, because I don't know for here, but in France, it's a bit separated. You have people who play classical music, you have people who play contemporary music, and well, I consider that we are all musicians and that we have to play, I think, all the repertories, not only one specialty, not only one style. So I think that can work also doing that kind of publishing, because you help people to understand better. They won't take the score and say, oh, it's too hard, I don't understand anything, it's not for me. If they have some indication of another performer that can understand what they need before to practice, to understand well, I think it's easier after that. And so it works. Now, some people, we are very happy because the pieces are played in California. In December, somebody will play this a cappella. And Riff, I think there is another in Vienna, in Austria, who will play it next year. So it begins to work. And this is really new because the Riff by Bastien David that was published like a few months ago. And just a bit before this a cappella by Alireza Farang. Riff by Bastien David was published by the edition Le Moine, which is a very known French publisher. And the Alireza Farang a cappella was published by Imprompta Edition, which is, I think they are based in Germany. It's a German publisher. So it's always the same way to be a complete artist, to think about the problematics we encounter and to find solution. And so the projects, they appeal also like solutions of a problematic, of your conception of the context in which you are. Then, so of course I continue to give classical music concerts, repertoire, and well, I played lots of Schumann, like in 2018. I don't know why, but it was my year of Schumann. I needed this this composer at this time, and in the same times I met Tristan Murail, which is a French composer, and that was a very strong meeting for me. I met him because of a festival. They wanted me to play his piece for cello solo, Attracteurs étranges, which is a very good piece and big piece. So we practiced together, and he told me that he had like 2 pieces for cello, never recorded before, also a duo for cello and flute that was completely new, never recorded. So we imagined that I could record those pieces never recorded, because I liked so much this this composer and his universe, and that for me made sense to record his music. And it corresponded to my musical desire at this moment. But in the same times, I really liked this same moment, the Schumann music. And well, first I proposed to Tristan Murail to put him together with Robert Schumann. He was a bit astonished because it was a bit unusual, but in his music there is kind of rubato, really close to romanticism, and also he has a care of the sound of the instrument, close to romantic music also. For instance, the first time I practiced with him, usually when you practice with composers, there is a fashion, like you cannot vibrate. And so you arrive and everything has to be very clear, but without any vibrato. So of course, it's not all the time like that, but most of them, they use vibrato. You can just vibrate when it's indicated. And him, it was not at all like that. He said to me, but like vibrates is music. We talked about phrase, like in classical music, in romantic music. So for me, it was like a fresh high air, and very, very beautiful experience, because it was just pure music. So I had lots of reason to put them together, and finally Tristan Murail discovered also a bit more the pieces for cello and piano by Robert Schumann, and he was really enthusiastic about this project, and he decided himself to make a transcription of the Scene from Childhood by Robert Schumann for the 3 instruments of the recording, so cello, piano, and flute. So also that was interesting, because the idea of transcription was a bit not well considered in France in 20th century and 21st century. And I think we have to cross all those borders of fashion of one century or another one. So for me it was very interesting because he felt free to do this. He had the desire to do this, and he wanted also make, it's not like a transcription, it's like more than an orchestration and a coloration with contemporary effect, but also respecting all the harmonic of the scene from childhood. So this is my last album, Une rencontre, an encounter, and it released in June of this year. So it's new, and it was a label, an English one, but they belong to Nexus company, so they're based in the United States. And well, I think I get lots of very good reviews and everything, so I'm really happy about it. Now I'm also teaching in the Aulnay-sous-Bois Conservatory, which is a big conservatory for the cello. We have like 4 classes of cello, which is big. And I wanted also to introduce contemporary repertoire to students, because in the conservatories, they have so many to learn at the beginning that it's not so easy to spend time with them for contemporary music, and also because there are not so many books of contemporary music, and the other teachers, they don't know, or they are not used to play contemporary music themselves, or they're a bit afraid, or so I organized full day of masterclasses, workshop, and concerts on contemporary music for cello with Eric Maria Couturier, that I invited, which is the cello soloist of Ensemble Contemporain. I don't know if you know, it's the ensemble that Pierre Boulez created a few years ago, many years ago. So that was a good experience for them, and also the performers. I mean, the more advanced, like those that we have who begin to try the international competition or to enter the national conservatories in Paris. I think they develop also a register a bit bigger, and they became more free with their instrument, with more global approach, which is very good also for the repertoire after that. So, well, my projects now are, I will premiere a cello concerto by a French composer, Augustin Brault, with Ensemble Siège, with Julien Leroy, director, they are French. At the national scene in Brest, in France. I have also a project with composer Mirtru Escalona Mijares, which is a Venezuelan composer, and it will be, cello concerto with electronics, with Onyx Ensemble, that probably you know. I'm sure you know all of them. They are Mexican, and they're very good. I think they are based in Mexico City. So that will be for 2021. And we had the first residency with the composer in Art's studio in France, because they commissioned the project. I have also, of course, cello solo recitals. Next week I will go to Shanghai to play, to perform, chamber music projects, and the program UR is Une rencontre. It's written UR, but it's the program of my album. And I have also a project of other recording, but I prefer to take time and not to do recordings every year, as other performers do, because I really want to consider the projects are as necessities for me and musical desire, and the notion of timing is really important. And when is the good moment, when it appears like a necessity for me. And for that, I think the result is coherencia, yes, coherence. And also I feel good with all the projects I have, which is really important. I never do a project just to make money or to find how do you say, a convention with a structure. Or I think it's better to wait a bit and to be sure in one moment, very precise, it will give birth of something very important for you. That's my way to consider my work, my being of musician of 21st century. So, and also, yeah, the last point, don't be afraid not to be fashionable. That's really important, I think, not to be too influenced. So now, let's start with the second part of this conference and talk about technical possibilities on the cello. So I have chosen some different topics that interest me. The first one is about this idea of paradox between movement and immobility. So I have chosen some pieces that I play, that I'm used to play, or so other pieces written for me. So, for instance, in the piece of Jonathan Harvey called Curve with Plateau, you have a moment of very high register, which creates, it's very special because you play this, you have this space to play all the notes. It's very, very close to the bridge. And in the same time, the space becomes larger and the notion of the time is complete. We will lose the notion of the time. So here there is an immobility that I think it's very interesting in the line. So I can show you some extracts. This is a bit of the score. professional. Well, so I would like to present another extract and another notion of how is considered the movement. It's in a piece by Tristan Muraille. It's an extract of a piece originally for viola solo called C'est un jardin secret, ma sœur, ma fiancée, une fontaine close, une source gelée. It's a very big title, I'm sorry. It's an extract from this title comes from the Cantique des Cantiques, Cantigas de los Cantigas, see? From the Bible. I don't know how you say it. So it's from the Bible, and he wrote it for the wedding of two friends of him, and he transcribed himself and made a version for cello solo. So in his piece, which is very interesting, is that you can see that there are no bars, so the rhythm is never vertical. It's always considered, sorry, like an energy, like a movement, because he's very interested in the physical science, and well, he considered the movement like something which will grow and there will be an acceleration, like in this case, or the contrary. Sometimes lots of energy and then there will be lost, or other example, lots of energy, but another event will make this stronger. So the movement is in relation with energy. So it's really singular, I think. So you can see the writing is proportional also, even if it's printed. You have always those lines which indicated how to drive the rhythm. Here, that will be slower and slower, for instance. Here, of course, it's the contrary, that will be a bit faster. So. Unusual is from this Bastien David. I don't know if you remember, I talked about him, okay? So it's a piece he wrote for me, and well, we found together something a bit unusual. in this idea of movements is, of course, from Jacinto Chelsea. So, do everybody knows this composer and what he did? Yes? So, I won't explain everything, but the idea of the one sound and all the life of this sound is will build the pieces. So, for instance, this piece, we will spend 10 minutes between a B flat until, I think, a C and a quarter tone, and then we will go back to this B flat. So there is a very few evolution of the pitches in the piece, but the main evolution is deeply in the sound. So it's like an atom and all the vibration around, but you know already perhaps. So the movement is inside, and here, what I wanted to show you is also the way it's written. So you have those numbers here, 2, 6, 4, 3, 3, 4, 3, etc. And they have they have the numbers of variation of the pitch you will have, but very little. So you will have but you have two lines in the same time. So what is interesting in this way to consider the movement is that physically I won't move. You won't see me moving. But the song will be alive, will move inside himself, and look, I will just move one finger above all the notes. So this is really easy. For instance, I will just move this line, but not the little one. On the contrary, I can move from I would like to talk about some timbre effects. For this section, I did not add the scores in the PowerPoint because I think it's more interesting just to listen to this effect than to the scores. The scores were really for special relation between the waves movement and sounds. So now, about the timbre effect, I would like to show you some result of my result of this analysis. try to help them and to find with them some solutions in the instrument. So it's really important if you can work with other students and other performers. We talked with Mario and Emma about the different possibilities that you have, and that's really good. I'm really happy also to have been there a few days ago to do this workshop with you. But don't be shy. Go to the conservatory. I don't know, just to meet some friends. You told me, Gerardo, that you had a friend, cellist. So I think you have to open a maximum to be in contact with performers. It's really important. You cannot be just composer in your mind, I think. And it's just to cross the street. Well, take the bus, but go to the conservatory, or now with the social media, it's super easy also to meet people. And I know also that there are lots of guitarists at the Centro Mexicano de Cultura. So I think you can find this relation with performer. I think it's really, really important. And well, for me, what is important is this trilogy of composer, work with performer, and then the way it's delivered to audience. But you have to know that it's just a little detail. For instance, Jacinto Chelsea, he was also a poet, and he wrote some books. So he had a conception a bit close to this, but a bit more singular. His idea was the music came from God to composer, right? Then the composer give it to the performer. The performer adds what he has to add. The performer will give it to the audience. And the perception of the audience of what is the piece by all those elements will go back to the gods. So it's a nice idea. I think it's just for you to know. It's not my idea. It's not event anything invented. And so also what I wanted to say is always this idea of transmission and sharing together. I mean, we are musicians. It's a good luck for all of us. And I think, I don't know here, but in Europa, we have to rethink all the time how to live in a society where it's not so easy to create, to propose unusual and not business things, not, we say bankable in France, like not, I don't know the word in English, bankable, that would be productive. So to keep always in mind how to transmit, how to give your energy to this. That's my opinion. So if you have some questions or ideas or things to say, please, it's your moment. That can be in Spanish, ¿no? Podemos cambiar.
Thank you for your talk. Very interesting. You mentioned Nomos Alpha by Xenakis. It's one of the pieces I love most, and I've been studying it a lot. And I was deceived many years thinking that the glissando passage at the end was playable. And then discovered, it was in 2016 that there was a congress for the 40th anniversary of that piece, and there was a lot of studies and analysis. And performers always cover the fact that they need to overdub the ending. And I only saw one performance on YouTube of I think it was a Swiss cellist who played it herself. And the impossibility of playing it was beautiful. In other versions, like Rohan de Saram, he just stops before that. Yeah, or he stops in playing it live, he stops the piece before it ends. and he stops there and doesn't play the ending. So I wanted to ask you, why is this like such a secret between performers that they don't accept this passage? Yeah, this double glissando. Yeah. Uh-huh. The tuning, you need to tune very low. Yeah. Right. Because I do find it beautiful to try this impossibility. It doesn't take away from the piece or from the performance, on the contrary, but in many places it's hidden. It's like something that you're ashamed of admitting that it's an impossible passage, and trying to do it is beautiful. Thank you.
¿Otra pregunta?
Hi. Well, I noticed that some of the techniques that you showed were quite, you said they were simple, right? But do you think that a cellist that doesn't is highly skilled would perform it like accurately, these techniques you showed? Do you think there's like hope for composers to not need a highly skilled instrumentist? Yeah. One more.
Hi. I noticed that in the lecture, you like pay a lot of attention on the context of the pieces and on the resultant of the sound. So my question here is that usually that doesn't happen. Usually the performer only needs like the information to play, and this is the position. Okay, here it is. So, what is your point of view about those instructions on the sheets or in the score? You think that extra information is necessary, or is more like given with interaction with the composer? Yeah, like we need to include that information on the score, or it needs to get by the, I don't know, the feedback. Yeah, thank you.
Hi. With all your experience as a performer, what would you consider like annoying when you work with a composer? Yes, annoying.
¿Alguien más?
You already said there are not that many books for contemporary music, but I wonder if there is at least one. Because I would really like to learn, all that I've learned in cello for playing contemporary music is with the works of my friends, but I would love to have some studies or something I could work on to practice my technique for this music. Sure. Yes. Okay. Sure. Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
First of all, I wanted to congratulate you on your documentation work for both pieces you mentioned. But I would like to know if you have considered, like she said, writing a book with all the experience you've had with those pieces and other pieces and techniques. So it could be helpful for new cello players and also for composers to really have an idea of what it's like to practice these kind of things. I don't know. Have you considered that?
la última pregunta. ¿Ya?
I have I want to know what's your experience in teaching music and which parameters do you use to vary when teaching to young children, and how do they perceive this kind of music making? What's your approach? This kind of music? I mean, how do they receive the contemporary techniques, and how they react to your way of teaching? I think that's really important for us to transmit the knowledge we have and the experience you have, and I'm very interested in that aspect.
So my question has to do a little bit with the process. So I wondered if there was a time, well, yeah, if there was a time where both composer and performer, and you as a performer, take part in the composition. Like, for example, in these singular effects, if there was like, what was the process in some of them? I mean, yeah. The point is that if there was a piece or you had an experience where you took part of the piece like as a composer, performer, with the composer, I don't know if it's really clear my question. It's a little bit, sí, no sé. Se hacerla en español para hacerlo menos enredoso. ¿Sí? Ah, ok. Si en alguna, si en alguna pieza, en el momento de estar trabajando con el compositor, de alguna manera, por un momento tú también te transformaste como parte de, o sea, compositor, al proponer, no sé, un sonido y modificarlo totalmente, no sé, me llamó, me puse a pensar y dije, pues, sería interesante, ¿no? Si preguntarle si tuvo alguna experiencia en donde eso tuvo resultado, ¿no? En la pieza ya al final y hubo cambios, no sé.
Bueno, muchísimas gracias. Gracias, María, por tu plática. Ahora no se vayan porque sus compañeros de quinto y de tercero les van a dar unos anuncios. Es sobre un proyecto que ellos están construyendo y es bien importante que ustedes como parte de la comunidad de música y tecnología participen en este tipo de actividades. Bueno, muchísimas gracias.
Gracias también a Mario Duarte por organizar todo eso y pues, sé que es un gran trabajo de todo organizar y gracias por invitarme a compartir este momento. Si quieren, por ayudas, tengo los CDs, sí, CDs
Hola compañeros,